Welcome in, everybody, to the Flagship podcast. I am Chip Brown of Horns247.com, joined by our managing editor, Taylor Estes. Taylor, how are you doing?
I'm good, Chip. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. We have football to talk about today, which I love.
Yeah.
We've got 21 summer enrollees at Texas who are beginning summer workouts this week. So we have 21 new players to talk about, Taylor.
Yeah.
And from what I'm hearing, all 20 checked in except for James Madison, transfer linebacker, Diamante Tucker Dorsey, who's expected to be in on Wednesday, June 1st of this week. So, when you look at these summer enrollees, your attention immediately goes to the 6 offensive linemen who are arriving, headlined by Devin Campbell, the number 1 offensive line recruit in 2022, according to the 24/7 Sports composite ranking, and Kelvin Banks, the top-ranked tackle in the nation in 2022, according to the 24/7 Sports composite ranking. So, when you think of the summer enrollees, doesn't your mind immediately go to those 6 offensive linemen, hoping that at least 2 of them, maybe the 2 I just mentioned, the 5 stars in that group, can have an immediate impact this season?
Yeah. I think that's the scenario that Texas is in. That is the hope. Ideally, Chip, no, I don't think many people would want to be like, oh, 2 true freshman offensive linemen that have yet to go through a college football practice or anything are going to be the guys that are going to be relied upon. But that's the case. That's the situation for Texas this year. And I think that there's no denying that everybody's following the offensive line. And that's kind of weird to say, right? Because I always feel like offensive linemen a lot of times are the faceless bodies that are on the field. They don't get nearly enough credit, or a lot of times blame, honestly, for what they do on the field. They're just kind of the big guys out there. And so the fact that Texas is in a situation where, it's a good situation in a sense that you do have 2 5-stars that you are welcoming to campus this week, and that are, potentially viable options to start as true freshmen. I think if you were to ask Kyle Flood, like a lie detector test, if this would be an ideal scenario, he'd probably be like, no. But overall, I do think that, with just the way that the offensive line class, kind of panned out, the way that late, December, or I guess early December, but late signing period type of push to get some of these guys like Devin Campbell, like Kelvin Banks, like Cam Williams. It's definitely one of the more hyped offensive line classes, I would say, that I've seen in covering Texas, Chip. And you got to hope, if you're a Texas fan, that they live up to that hype, right? Because they're definitely going to be relied upon, I think, in year one. And that's just the way it is right now.
Well, let me read you the scouting report for Devin Campbell.
All right.
Average height with good length and broad, stout build. This is from our man Gabe Brooks, awesome recruiting analyst for 24/7. Owns college-ready size and matching field demeanor. I like that. Two-way snaps foster functional athleticism and awareness, displays impressive movement ability relative to size with mobility to lead the way as a puller and as a devastating second-level blocker, heavy-handed, great punch. I'm hoping, Taylor, that Devin Campbell ends up being what Justin Blaylock was for Texas. Blaylock, a member of that 2005 national championship team, could play guard, could play tackle, played in the NFL for the Atlanta Falcons. I know that's a lot to live up to, but that's what I'm hoping for. That's when I watch his film and I, read all the scouting reports. That's kind of the guy I'm thinking, okay, maybe this could be Justin Blaylock. And so there is a lot of excitement and anticipation with these 6 offensive linemen coming in.
Yeah. And I mean, Chip, like, that's a huge comparison. I mean, if there are some younger listeners, they obviously know who Justin Blaylock is, but probably don't remember, the type of player that he was. I mean, he was a nasty player out there. And if you talk to him off the field, I'd met Justin Blaylock before. If you talk to him off the field, he wouldn't say more than like 5 words, and it's just like a big teddy bear. But man, you don't want to, when his motor is on and he's on the field, you don't want to go against him. But I think that's a huge potential for a position that Texas has really struggled with for over a decade now. I mean, my goodness. I mean, when 2 of your kind of headliners at offensive line since 2008 were both like underrated 3 stars, or very lowly rated 3-star recruits that were the diamond in the roughs, that basically came to Texas because there was a coaching change and they were already committed, to other coaches or whatever it may be. That's I think a good scenario that Texas is in a situation where they have one of the top offensive line prospects coming in. Now you just got to see what Texas can do with it. Because I think the biggest thing, Chip, when you talk about the offensive line for Texas, it's not about recently, I will say, prior to Steve Sarkisian taking over, they didn't really make too much of a push, it seemed like, almost to sign extra bodies at the offensive line. I know they went after some big name guys that they missed out on over the years, like the Brockermeyer twins are the ones I think Texas fans are fresh in their head. But if you think about it, they still did get some guys like the Tyler Johnsons and stuff, but there was no development. I mean, if you look at the offensive line position, it's not just a lack of recruiting, hits or misses or anything like that. It's a lack of development that has been going on at that position for 10 years plus now. And so, they have the upside of the talent coming in. I trust Gabe Brooks. I trust our 24/7 sports, national recruiting analysts that do put their name on rating these players and ranking them before they come from, move from high school to college. I have full faith in them. I am very intrigued to see what Kyle Flood can do with that type of caliber of offensive lineman that, Texas has kind of missed out on over the last several years, of the last several recruiting cycles. Those top guys in the state of Texas, have seemed to go outside of state lines. That's not the case this year. So I'm intrigued to see what Kyle Flood. I think Kyle Flood, I know he had his year 1 job, obviously, in 2021. I truly feel like the clock starts now for him because he's getting his guys in. He's getting elite talent in. He didn't have that when he took over. And I don't blame him a lot, Chip, honestly, for some of the woes on the offensive line last season. I feel like this is almost a clean slate for him. And if he can do anything similar to what he was able to do with offensive linemen at Alabama, then look out. But that's still, a ways away, I think. But no doubt this is a big, there's a lot of upside. There's a lot of hype following some of these guys. And again, if you're a Texas fan, you just hope they deliver.
Well, these are the kinds of offensive linemen that Kyle Flood was coaching at Alabama.
Exactly, yeah.
And it's interesting that Steve Sarkisian said, you tend to hit on 50%. Mm-hmm. So, he indicated that if you include Cole Hudson, the early enrollee offensive lineman, that's 7 offensive linemen, that 3, maybe 4 will hit and the other 3 won't. And so you're hoping that at least 2 of these guys are special. And that's when I look back on that 2002 recruiting class that had Justin Blaylock, Casey Stutter. Blaylock was a 5-star. He was the number 18 player in the nation. Devin Campbell, the number 10 player in the nation. But you had Casey Studdard, who was a 3-star, who turned out to be a mauler. You had Lyle Senline, who was a 3-star, who turned out to be one of the best centers ever to play at Texas, and a very successful NFL center. Started as a rookie for the Arizona Cardinals in a Super Bowl. And that's what you got to hope, that a Cole Hudson or a Connor Robertson or Nato Umizolu, Cam Williams with that length. I mean, he's 6'7", but his arm length is over 36 inches. I mean, it's phenomenal, the physical tangibles that this group of offensive linemen have. And you're hoping Kyle Flood can work his magic so that it's a higher hit rate than 50% in this group. And then they got to follow it up, Taylor. They got to come right back and make sure you're reading, along at horns247.com and following the State of Recruiting podcast. Our guys, Mike Roach and Hudson Standish, do a great job, and they're documenting all of these incredible summer visits that are planned. It's going to be a huge month of June, and some of that includes trying to reel in more blockbuster offensive linemen. Taylor, so we start there, and then we'll stay on offense because the remaining 4 June enrollees on offense are receivers. You've got freshman Brennan Thompson, you got freshman Savion Red, and then you've got the transfers, Alabama transfer Ajayi Hall, who's already on campus, and Iowa State transfer Tariq Milton, who we talked a lot about last week. We think he's just going to be a great insurance policy, maybe more. Coming in as a graduate transfer, had 2 really explosive years at Iowa State. And then the last couple years, not as, explosive. He had some injuries, but everyone at Iowa State, and we talked about this, love this guy as a locker room guy, willing to do whatever it takes, can play outside, can play the slot, and can, be a good role model for someone like Ajayi Hall, who's got all the measurables you want. He's 6'3", he's got a 6'8" wingspan, he runs 4.4, and was one of the top recruits in the country, but is also a guy who is very confident, isn't afraid to say things that maybe he might want to not say.
Things
but
that
we'll see.
Will ruffle Nick Saban's feathers, maybe.
Right. I mean, you want him to be a good teammate. That's all.
Yes.
You just want him to be a good teammate. And, I wrote about this in the Insider last week about Brennan Marion, that he's really pushing Jordan Whittington to be the leader, the vocal leader of that position group, because Jordan Whittington, no one will mess with Jordan Whittington on the team. He's one of those guys that has everybody's respect. He's a bad man, and no one will, they all respect him.
Yeah.
So, I think that's interesting. It's going to be a really talented receiver room. Brennan Thompson just ran a 10-200. If he can catch and run routes at a college level, and we'll find that out soon, watch out.
Yeah.
I mean, Xavier Worthy was a true freshman.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm very intrigued by Brennan Thompson. And I think another thing with that, when he did run in the state championship high school track meet just a few weeks ago, right? The month of May was crazy for me. So I'm like trying to keep my bearings straight here. But, I saw when I saw the race that he won there, it was a video that Xavier Worthy put together. And there was a group of wide receivers and group of Texas football players that went to this track meet for, a guy that's not even currently on the team at the time. I think that says a lot. And I'm curious how much of that, when you talk about Jordan Whittington and how Brennan Marion really wants him to be the vocal leader of that group. I mean, I feel like he's been very involved in a lot. When you see the public pictures, or at least I'll say this offseason, team together, whether it's on Texas football, wherever it is, on social media, whatever it may be, Jordan Whittington always seems to be there. And there's always some of the elite players also around him. And the fact that, those guys went to Brennan Thompson's track meet, I mean, my goodness, I mean, I don't know, maybe people like watching track meets, but in May and hot as, all get out here, I don't know if I would choose in my free time in the off season to sit and watch one guy running a track meet, but they were there for him. And so, I'm very curious to see how much of that really is, Jordan Whittington taking kind of the bull by the horn. I know that's kind of a silly expression to say when you're talking about Texas, but still, I wonder how much that's him doing that based off of what Brennan Marion's wanting from him. And if you did not get a chance to read Chip's article on Brennan Marion or Tashard Choice, honestly, both of those were excellent pieces. Chip is very, very good when it comes to telling people stories, and those are both excellent. But Brennan Marion was the one who was released in the Insider last week. Definitely check it out. You'll learn a lot, both about him, but also the philosophies. And you're probably hoping that you see some of those philosophies on the field this season at the receiver position, Chip.
Yeah, I mean, Brennan Marion, he's a fascinating guy. Had to scratch and claw, bounced around high schools, didn't stay around long enough to draw. Well, he did have recruiting attention, but his transcripts were a mess because of personal reasons. He said his mom was in a couple of unhealthy relationships where they had to kind of move to get her out of a domestic violence situation. She's doing great now, but his transcript was so bad he had to go to the JUCO route, and he even as part of his JUCO experience, he was sleeping on the press box floor. It wasn't glamorous by any means. He was at De Anza College in Northern California. This was bare bones JUCO football, but he had such a good season as a sophomore that he was discovered by Tulsa, by Gus Malzahn, by Mike Norvell, who's now the head coach at Florida State, who was a grad assistant for Gus Malzahn at Tulsa way back then. And Brennan Marion still holds the Division I college football record for yards per catch in a season and in a career from his days at Tulsa. So he's played the position. He knows what he's talking about, and he's high energy and doesn't put up with any excuses, because that guy's had to overcome all kinds of stuff to get where he is. So fascinating guy. And I hope everyone takes a look at that Insider. And Taylor, that kind of wraps up the offensive newcomers. On defense, there are 8 summer enrollees.
Yeah. Chip, real quick, before you move on, just in case people have not had a chance to read it, when you say that Brennan Marion set those NCAA records for yards per catch and then yards per catch career-wise, his yards per catch was 31.9 for the single season record, and then career 28.7. So if he can get that anywhere close to that out of his group of players here, look out. Sorry, I don't want to divert away from what you were saying, but I think people need to hear what those records were.
Yeah, and that's why he still holds those records.
Yeah.
Because they are that explosive. And Gus Malzahn, Mike Norvell, I interviewed them both for that article, and they just talked about what a hard worker he was, how tough he was. He wanted the over the middle stuff. He just had a great energy and spirit about him, and very similar to Tashard Choice, who started off his career at Oklahoma, redshirted in 2003 when OU went to the national championship game, and then along comes Adrian Peterson as a freshman in 2004 and rushes for almost 2,000 yards as a freshman, as a Heisman finalist. Tashard Choice then transferred to Georgia Tech, played for Chan Gailey, the former Cowboys coach, who he ended up playing for again when Chan Gailey was the head coach of the Buffalo Bills. So, big time hires by Steve Sarkisian onto his staff this year in Tashard Choice and Brennan Marion. So check out those Insiders and get to know those 2 new assistants, because they're fascinating people in addition to being very talented football coaches. And Brennan Marion, if you've followed his career at all, he has his own offense. I mean, he is a highly intelligent guy. He has this thing he calls the go-go offense that he ran at Howard under Mike London, the former University of Virginia head coach. And they hold the record for the largest upset by point spread when they were at Howard together in 2017. They upset UNLV. They were a 45-point underdog. And thanks to Brennan Marion's unconventional go-go offense, which uses triple option running concepts, sometimes, 2 running backs to either side of the quarterback. In addition to West Coast passing concepts, it gives defenses fits. And so check out those insiders, because I go into all kinds of detail about it. And I think those guys were big time hires by Steve Sarkisian in the offseason.
Yeah, they were. I mean, they were two of the guys that were at the top of his list of who he did want to hire. And after a losing season, it's not the easiest thing to get your number one, I guess, for both guys at a position. Yeah, Chip did a great job of that. And you definitely want to check out both of those. I think that Texas has some really young, bright type of talent for the future of college football on their staff right now. So you hope, if you're a Texas fan, it all gets, put together. But defense, Chip, as you had mentioned a little bit before I cut you off there, to talk about the record there, that still remains a question mark. So you want to flip over to that side?
Yeah. So it was a big time offensive line haul with 7, and then there were 8 defensive linemen, a couple of whom, Justice Finkley and Jere Bledsoe enrolled early. But you're getting Derek Brown, the edge rusher, Ethan Burke from Westlake, also an edge rusher, and then the guy can't wait to see him in action, Jamon Tapp from Louisiana. Guys put together. Guys got what it looks like to be a really, really successful edge rusher. And then you've got a couple defensive tackles in Christopher Ross and Zach Swanson. And then you pick up a couple of linebackers. Now, no one's really excited about Travell Johnson, the 3-star, one of the lower rated players in the 2022 Texas recruiting class. But this guy, you watch his film, he just loves contact. I love how physical this guy is. I think if he can be coached, and he's got the ability to pick up the concepts that he needs to pick up quickly, I think he's going to be a really good special teams player immediately and develop into something. And then the most recent transfer, Diamante Tucker Dorsey from James Madison, an FCS All-American, a little undersized, but the guy loves football. Another good insurance policy, Taylor, at a position where Texas needs depth.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, say what you will about him not being, a Division I All-American. It doesn't matter. At this point, linebacker has remained a question of concern for Texas. And it was that way last year. It's this way this year again. And it's not necessarily, obviously, the starters. When you think of, DeMarvion Overshawn and stuff, of course, people are expecting him to continue where he left off last season. But you need depth. First of all, you saw last season on defense for Texas, as the games wore on, even the games that they were playing well in the first half, and say it was offense, whatever it is, not staying on the field, they wore out and they didn't have quality depth at some of the key positions, linebacker being one of those. And that still remains the case, entering this season. I feel like, Diamante, Tucker Dorsey, I'm very curious to see, how he kind of fills a void, if he fills a void from a depth chart perspective. But Steve Sarkisian has said all along since he's been at Texas, he's not going to just take guys to take guys. They're not just looking to fill roster spots right now. They're looking to fill roster spots with guys that they think are viable options that could see the field. And so, it's too early, I think, to question if how their evaluation is going. I feel like if the 2022 signing class is any indication of, how well these coaches can evaluate and then, recruit type of guys, I think that's a good sign for the future. And I'm very intrigued by him, Chip. I mean, I'll be honest, I did not watch any James Madison football games last year that I can recall. So he kind of comes in as one of those, probably extremely under the radar, but I think he has a lot of intrigue too, that it's going to be interesting to kind of see, how Pete Kwiatkowski and how Jeff Choate use him. But definitely that position's one they needed a body at. And I'm intrigued. What's your take on him? Did you watch any James Madison games or anything?
I didn't watch any James Madison games, but I did watch the film
Yeah.
of what I could find on YouTube. And this is no doubt about it, a Jeff Choate special. If you'll remember, Jeff Choate was an FCS coach at Montana State before coming to Texas. That decision aided by the COVID-19 pandemic, canceling that FCS 2020 season. But Jeff Choate is aware of the top talent in FCS and, clearly identified, Diamante, Tucker Dorsey as a guy who could play at this level. So what an opportunity for, Diamante, Tucker Dorsey. And this is, the good end of the transfer portal. We talk about, hey, student athletes need to have the right to be able to go where they want to go. That's great. We know the portal's full of kids who were encouraged to leave and are not getting offers. They're not going anywhere. And that's the sad end of the transfer portal. The happy end is when a kid excels at a certain level of football because he was too small, he was too this, he was too that, and then gets an opportunity at the highest level. And so I'm intrigued by Diamante Tucker Dorsey, and I can't wait to see what he brings to the table because he's got a short time to figure everything out. He's got to be ready to go in a little, 2 months when fall camp starts, and he's got to make a really strong impression between now and then on both the coaches, the strength coaches, his teammates, and I'm intrigued because we know that has been a position of need for Texas in the portal for months. And this is the guy that they have selected to come in and help with depth and insurance. So, the other two newcomers summer enrollees are safety Austin Jordan and cornerback Xavion Bryce Taylor. And these are, two of the, players in the 2022 recruiting class who do not have the buzz, kind of like, I mentioned with Travell Johnson. So, when that's the case, then come in and show everybody, show them
Create your own buzz.
Create your own buzz, because Xavion Bryce, 6'1", 175 pounds, can fly. Love that length, love that size. Let's see what he brings. And then Austin Jordan is he did not get the buzz of the BJ Allen and of a kid like that. So let's see what Austin Jordan can do.
247 prospect coming out of high school, though. He was a 4-star. It's actually nationally ranked number 24/7. So he was the last of our top 247 rankings. But yeah,
you just when you're in a class with BJ Allen and
Jalen Gilbo, Larry Turner Gooden.
Yeah, Larry Turner Gooden.
Then you
both
talk
those
about
guys went through the spring.
Yeah, Terrence Brooks. Then you talk about even Ryan Watts. A transfer going through spring. Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, and if you listen to our interview with Michael Griffin, he says Ryan Watts is a safety.
Mm-hmm.
Not a corner at 6'3", but we'll let the Texas coaches decide that.
That's going to be interesting. I wonder what because how tall is Michael Griffin?
He's 6'1".
Okay, because I wonder what it is kind of interesting or unique to see 6'3", corners. I wonder what his thoughts were when Holton Hill and Devontae Davis and Chris Boyd, if he thought they should be safeties too, or if they should be corners, because they were bigger. They were 6'2", 6'3" type of guys. I'd be curious to hear if it's a specific skill set or just he sees those corners and if they're above 6'1", it's like no, go play safety.
Well, I think he watched Ryan Watts in the spring game and made that decision. So we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah.
Okay, and then special teams.
Hey, there's a kicker, and a scholarship kicker is on the roster now, and a scholarship deep snapper. So
Lance St. Louis as the deep snapper, and Will Stone, kicker from Austin Regents High School. If you saw our flagship podcast interview with Cameron Dicker, Dicker the kicker said he helped recruit Will Stone. Feels like he's going to be a really good one. So that's exciting because we came out of spring football with no buzz around, and no offense. Look, the kicking game is not sexy. It's simply about, can you make the 35-yarder, 45-yarder, 50-yarder? And Bert Auburn and Gabby Lozano are, let's just say, they didn't leave a great impression with Steve Sarkisian. So that job is wide open for Will Stone to come in and win.
Yeah. I feel like I just thought of this, and this is my dorky dad joke here, but I can't wait for Will Stone to be in a situation where he is a game winner that he has to kick. I'm calling it now. I guarantee the game broadcast will say Stone Cold if he actually hits the game winner.
You know it.
Stone Cold Will Stone.
Stone Cold. It's coming at you.
Trademarked Flagship Podcast. June 1st, 2022.
There you go. Well, hopefully he's worthy of a nickname like that.
Yes, yeah, you hope so.
I mean, remember, Dicker the kicker proved himself as a true freshman in that 2018 Texas OU Red River Shootout when he hit the 40-yarder with 9 seconds left to give Texas the 48-45 win. So seems like more and more true freshmen are making an impact, whether it's kicker or, heck, I'm watching Texas's golf team right now in the semifinals of match play, and they're going up against Vanderbilt, who has a freshman who won the individual NCAA golf championship this year. So, hey, these freshmen can come in and get stuff done.
Yeah, young guns here.
Young guns. All right, Taylor, you ready for some Love It or Leave It?
I am. Before we get to Love It or Leave It, we're going to take just a quick break, but stick around because we will have plenty more football talk since football season never ends here on the Flagship Podcast. So stay tuned. We will be right back. And if you're watching us on the Horns 24/7 YouTube channel, we will roll on here. Let's bring in some Love It or Leave It. Chip, you ready?
Okay, let me jump in real quick in mentioning the UT men's golf a second ago. We got to give some love to the Texas rowing team winning back-to-back national championships, and they did it almost in identical fashion to last year, where it came down to the final 8, the last race of the meet, and Texas had to finish ahead of Stanford and ahead of Princeton and Washington, and they did. They won it. They won that final 8 race, the first 8, the first 8 grand finale. They won it going away convincingly. And so kudos to Dave O'Neill and the Texas rowing team, back-to-back national championships. That's the 3rd national championship for Texas in the 2021-22 school year, to go along with the men's indoor track national title and the Texas women's tennis national title won last week. So great stuff. And Texas baseball is going to host a regional. They're going to have to play Air Force, a team that absolutely pulverized them in a midweek series earlier in the year. Air Force beat them 14-2, and then Texas had to score 2 runs in the bottom of the 9th to beat them 12-10 the following night. They played a 2-game midweek series, and Texas will open the Austin Regional against Air Force on Friday. So good stuff there from some of the other sports.
Yeah, Chip, so Texas has 3 national championships. They won the Directors Cup last year. Do you think they're in the race again this year?
They are. They're in the ballpark. And And kudos also to Peyton Stearns, the sophomore tennis player who won the individual tennis national championship, first ever for Texas women's tennis. The super sophomore, she'll probably turn pro after leading Texas to back-to-back national championships in team tennis and then winning the individual NCAA singles title. But yeah, Texas is, from my, looking at the last, they only update the Directors Cup after winter sports, and Texas was 5th, but they've added those national championships, which are 100 points in tennis and in rowing since then. So Texas looking like they will definitely be back in the mix to win the All Sports Directors Cup.
Wow.
Which, again, Stanford had a 25-year lock on that Directors Cup until Texas broke it last year. So
yeah, and that's huge too, Chip, because before we get to let's talk about this. I mean, this is a huge, amazing job by Chris Del Conte. I mean, let's be real. The Texas athletic department, it was in shambles, like literally in shambles for like in the
from
latter
2013 until Del Conte got here in December of 17.
And
4 long years.
Yeah,
and
even before that, it was just coasting.
Yeah.
As Mac Brown said, they're mom and popping it. Athletic department that was bringing in like close to $200 million, mom and popping it. I mean, what Chris Del Conte has done since he's gotten to Texas should not go ignored. I mean, I know that football's not there yet, but look at the overall body of work that he and his team have done. I mean, it's crazy. It really is. You need this leadership.
Vic Schaefer, Del Conte hire, back-to-back Elite Eights in women's basketball. Mike White, Del Conte's hire for softball, has them in the Women's College World Series. And softball had not been in the Women's College World Series since 2014. That was huge. They upset Arkansas, number 4 Arkansas, in the Fayetteville Super Regional to get to the College World Series. They'll play UCLA this week. And then Edric Florial, Del Conte's hire for the track coach, wins the men's indoor national championship this year in March. So I agree with you, Taylor. I mean, not only has Del Conte built $750 million in new, or overseen the construction of $750 million in new facilities that have touched every sport at Texas, including swimming. They got their outdoor pool that Eddie Reese was promised back in 1978 when he first took the job. But football just got the South End renovation, the new basketball arena, Moody Center, which and this $60 million practice facility that Chris Beard announced at one of those Texas fight tours is going to be called the Tito's Practice Center, because Tito Beverage of Tito's Vodka donated $20 million to that cause. So Del Conte's getting it done.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Excellent work by him for sure. All right, you ready for some Love It or Leave It?
Let's do it.
My first one for you is Love It or Leave It. The summer enrollee on offense you're most excited about is offensive lineman Devin Campbell, the highest rated 2022 offensive lineman in the country.
Yes, I'm going to love this. I think Devin Campbell is a special player, and I don't know how big his heart is. I hope it's enormous, because that's what Texas needs on that offensive line. They need a bunch of dudes with heart who will just go Justin Blaylock and Casey Studdard and Lyle Sendline on you. And I hope Devin Campbell is the second coming of Justin Blaylock. That's the guy that I kind of compare him to. And if he turns out like that, Texas coaches knew immediately that Justin Blaylock was a player. And he was a 4-year starter. Like I said, played in the NFL for the Atlanta Falcons, super smart guy. And that's the guy I'm hoping Devin Campbell is sort of comparable to. And if he is, then Texas has locked in one new starter on the offensive line. He can play tackle. He can play guard. So I'm going to love this, Taylor. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard not to, right? I mean, like he's the, top rated player that's coming in and at a position that he's probably going to be called upon immediately. I mean, I had sources that I spoke to during spring practice that I trust too in their assessment of the offensive line. It was there's going to be two freshmen starting on the offensive line, and those two true freshmen are not on campus right now. And so, a process of elimination makes you think that Devin Campbell, maybe even a Kelvin Banks too, like are the guys. I mean, I always butcher his name. I'm so angry. I still have not learned it yet. But Nato,
Yumi Azulu.
Yumi Azulu. Yeah, I mean, there's a number of guys to pick from that I think that could be quality and early contributors for Texas. But yeah, I think it's hard not to go with Devin Campbell. Just the way the whole offensive line class kind of played out this past recruiting cycle. It was intriguing to watch. It was fascinating to watch, and he was really the headliner. So it's really difficult, Chip, I think, for me to pick anybody else of the summer enrollees that are coming onto campus. I would probably say a close second would be Brennan Thompson, but I think I'm going to have to love this also and say that Devin Campbell gets the slight edge for me over Brendan Thompson.
Okay. All right. Love it or leave it, number 2.
Love it or leave it. The newcomer on defense you're most excited about is edge rusher Jamon Tapp, the highest rated defensive player of UT summer enrollees.
I am without a doubt going to love this.
I think you
Taylor.
teased us a little bit earlier that he's your guy, but yeah.
Yeah, this is a guy I'm really excited about. Again, Gabe Brooks, our 24/7 recruiting analyst, great, scouting report on Jamon Tapp. I'll just read a couple sentences from it, but displays disengaging ability thanks to phone booth power and sheer brute strength. Above average pursuit ability relative to size and role, could potentially grow into an interior spot, but reach and 2-point burst from the edge could put him in space for good as a hybrid defender. And here's the thing I love the most: plays basketball, throws the shot put, Taylor. This is a guy who has great feet. And we know from Brian Robison way back on that 2005 national championship team, who was a shot put thrower, those guys have great lower hip flexibility, and that allows them to contort their body, still maintain the ability to push a lot of weight, even when they're, somewhat compromised by having their body contorted. They just are super strong in their hips and their lower body. So I can't wait to see what Jamon Tapp turns into.
Yeah.
How about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm going to have to also agree with you and say, I love this too. Yeah, the other thing too, I do think it's important to note that one of his primary recruiter was Pete Kwiatkowski. When the defensive coordinator is your primary recruit, you don't see Pete Kwiatkowski's names on a lot of 24/7 sports, recruit profiles, or a lot of defense coordinators in general across, the sport, just because they're kind of the manager, and then they, divide out the duties to other people. Same with like offense coordinators can be. I feel like offense coordinators more so a lot of times are primary recruiters, but defense coordinators, at least the last few at Texas, usually have not truly been extremely like the primary guys. And he is. And I think that says something. I think it says the two guys that he was primary recruiters for this signing, cycle was Justice Finkley and then Jamon Tapp. And so, those were two of the top defensive prospects that Texas had. Those were huge gets for Texas. And I think you don't want to underestimate what that actually means for what they see of those guys and what they envision for them, once they get on campus. And so, everything that I don't want to regurgitate everything you just said, but yeah, again, like I think that this guy has a ton of upside. It's going to be really kind of fun, I think, to watch and to see. You hope that he does, develop into an elite edge rusher, and Texas needs it too. I mean, you can't. the big guys, the with his large big humans, that what Sark always calls them. It's not just offense, you need them on defense too. And so if you get some elite guys that really can be maulers up front on the defensive side of the ball and go after quarterbacks, put pressure on the quarterback, something Texas did not have it last year very much at all. You hope that a guy like Jamon Tap can develop into that type of player, and you hope it happens sooner rather than later. So yeah, I'm going to have to go with you again. You know how much I hate agreeing with you on all of these, and I have a feeling we might agree on all of these today, but I'm going to agree.
Well, I do know how much you hate to agree with me.
I know, right?
We'll just leave it at that. By the way, Jamon Tab has the same measurables as Joseph Osai. Let's hope he has the same hunger, the same passion for the game, and the same ability to be a great teammate.
Yes. Yeah, Texas could use some more Joseph Osai's on the roster for sure. All right.
All
Ready
right.
for 3?
Love it or leave it, number 3.
Love it or leave it. The biggest impact player of the summer enrollees will be an offensive lineman.
Oh my gosh. Texas Longhorn Nation is hoping like crazy that this is a love it situation. And I'm gonna give Devin Campbell the benefit of the doubt here. The number 1 offensive line recruit in the 2022 class. I think 24/7 gets it right, way more than they get it wrong in terms of the recruiting rankings and the makeup of the kid, the mettle, his his love of the game, and I'm gonna love this because I'm hoping, or not expecting, but I think when you look at the profile, it adds up to Devin Campbell, and so I'm gonna say I love this. That I do think the biggest impact player of the summer enrollees, the 21. That's a lot of summer enrollees arriving in June, Taylor. But yes, I'm gonna say that it'll be an offensive lineman, and I'll even go a little further and say, I'm thinking it'll be Devin Campbell.
Yeah.
How about you?
I mean, I feel like that's the easy answer. I'm gonna choose to disagree.
Wow.
I know, right?
Okay.
I'm just gonna say Will Stone. I mean, let's be honest. You pray to God he's an impact player, right? If that's your scholarship,
that's a good answer.
Kicker. Yeah, I'm gonna just kind of change the tune here. Yeah, I'm gonna go Will Stone. I think that I mean he has big shoes to fill, no doubt about it. I know people kind of brush off kicking, but you brush off the kicking game if the kicking game's doing its job. You don't brush it off when it's not. And Texas has been very fortunate to have a kicker in Cameron Dicker and a punter with him too, honestly.
Yeah,
and
Dicker the punter.
Yeah, I mean, and between him and then, before Ryan Bushevsky was injured in what was that, 2019 that he was in, right? Was that the season he first got injured? He was doing pretty well. And then you go back to even Michael Dixon. I mean, it's been a while since Texas has had questions in their kickers, whether it's kickers or punters. And so I do think that this is, no pressure or anything, Will Stone. You definitely have some big shoes to fill. And, hearing what Cameron Dicker did say about him when we did have him on the Flagship podcast earlier this spring, I feel like, Dicker's a unique kid, but I don't think he's going to be sugarcoating or lying or, trying to pump up a guy that he doesn't truly believe in. So yeah, I'm going to disagree, and I'll say Will Stone. Stone cold Will Stone.
You heard it here first.
Yeah.
Stone cold, baby. I think Taylor's cheering for her nickname.
I know, right?
To prevail. No, but you're right. I mean, based on what we saw in the spring, Will Stone needs to be stone cold. Yeah. For this Texas special teams run to continue. Texas has been on a roll for a while. So that's a good answer, Will Stone. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for listening to our little podcast today, kind of summarizing the 21 summer enrollees. And We appreciate you listening. So for Taylor Estes, I am Chip Brown. Until next time, we'll see you over at horns247.com. Stay safe and keep the faith.